In the fluorescent-lit chaos of Harper's Market, where the city's heartbeat pulsed through crowded aisles and hurried shoppers, a single act of cruelty would ignite a firestorm that would reshape lives. Amara Khan, a Pakistani immigrant with dreams woven into the fabric of her blue headscarf, reached for a jar of spices, unaware that Officer Frank Delaney, a man cloaked in authority and poisoned by prejudice, was about to strip away her dignity before a jeering crowd. But fate, with its unerring sense of justice, was watching, poised to deliver a twist so shocking it would unravel their worlds and reveal a truth that would echo through the neon-lit streets of Riverside City. Amara Khan navigated the crowded aisles of Harper's Market, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished floor. The store, a sprawling hub in Riverside City, buzzed with the Friday evening rush on July 11, 2025. The air was thick with the mingled scents of fresh produce, baked bread, and the sharp tang of cleaning solution. At 27, Amara was a recent arrival. From Lahore, Pakistan, having landed in the city 6 months ago with a suitcase, a partial scholarship, and a heart brimming with ambition. Her blue headscarf, vibrant as the Punjab sky, framed her face as she scanned the spice aisle for cumin seeds. She needed them for a biryani she planned to cook for her roommate, Sarah, a barista who'd become her anchor in this unfamiliar world. Amara's life was a delicate balance. Her part-time job as a cashier at Riverside Pharmacy covered her share of the rent in a cramped apartment she shared with Sarah and another tenant, Miguel, a quiet graphic designer. Every extra dollar went into a glass jar labeled nursing school, a tangible symbol of her dream to become a registered nurse. Back in Lahore, her family had poured their savings into her journey, her father's overtime shifts at a textile factory. Her mother sacrificed jewelry, her younger brother's foregone tutoring. "You're our hope," her mother had said at the airport, adjusting Amara's scarf with trembling hands. Those words carried her through the loneliness of Riverside's towering skyline. The store was a microcosm of the city's chaos. Shoppers jostled past, their carts rattling, while a tinny pop song crackled through the overhead speakers. Amara clutched her reusable tote bag, its contents a loaf of bread, a pack of tomatoes, and a small block of cheese carefully chosen to fit her $15 budget. She reached for the cumin, her fingers grazing the jar, when a voice sliced through the noise. "Hey, you!" The command was sharp, heavy with authority. Amara turned to see a police officer striding toward her, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. Officer Frank Delaney, mid-40s, with a buzz cut and a scowl etched into his weathered face, stood with his hands on his hips, radiating control. His blue eyes locked onto her, cold and unyielding. "What's in the bag?" he demanded, pointing at her tote. Amara's heart skipped. "Just groceries," she said, her voice soft but clear, her accent shaped by years of studying English in Lahore. She opened the bag, revealing its modest contents. Delaney's lip curled into a sneer that made her stomach twist. "Step back," he ordered, his voice loud enough to draw stares. Shoppers slowed, carts creaking to a halt, forming a loose circle around them. Amara's cheeks flushed, but she stepped away from the shelf, clutching the tote tightly. "Hands where I can see, M," Delaney snapped, his tone carrying a personal edge. "You people always think you can get away with it." The words, "you people," hit like a physical blow, sharp and dehumanizing. Amara's breath caught, but she raised her hands, palms open, as whispers rippled through the crowd. "I didn't do anything," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. She'd read about racial profiling, heard stories from other immigrants, but facing it now felt like a nightmare. Delaney snatched the tote from her hands, dumping its contents onto the floor. The bread landed with a thud, the tomatoes rolled under a shelf, and the cheese skidded across the tiles. Gasps and murmurs rose from the crowd, some pulling out phones to record. "Turn around," Delaney ordered. "Face the wall." Amara's mind raced. She hadn't stolen anything, hadn't even touched the cumin. But his hand hovered near his holster, and the weight of his authority pressed down on her. "Sir, I'm just shopping," she said, her voice shaking. Delaney's eyes narrowed. "You think you can talk back to me?" he said, loud enough for the aisle to hear. Turn around or I'll cuff you right here. The crowd thickened, a mix of curious onlookers and silent sympathizers. Amara turned, her hands trembling as she placed them against the shelf, the cold metal biting into her palms. What followed would haunt her for weeks. Delaney, claiming he needed to check for concealed items, began a pat-down that felt more like a performance than a procedure. His hands lingered, brushing her scarf, tugging at her jacket. "Take it off," he ordered, gesturing to her jacket. "Now." Amara's fingers fumbled with the zipper, her cheeks burning as she shed the layer, revealing a simple sweater. The crowd's murmurs grew, some uncomfortable, others nodding in approval. A woman clutching a cart muttered, "She probably stole something." Amara's scarf slipped slightly, and Delaney's smirk widened. "What's under that thing?" he asked, pointing at her headscarf. "Hiding something?" The question was a violation, tearing at her identity. Her scarf was her faith, her home, her strength. "It's for my faith," she whispered, her voice breaking. Delaney's grin didn't falter. "Rules are rules," he said, though no such rule existed. A store clerk, Jamal, a young man with a crook name tag, stepped forward. "Officer." "She's a regular." "She didn't do anything," he said, his voice firm but cautious. Delaney's glare silenced him. "Mind your business, kid," he growled. Jamal stepped back, his eyes meeting Amara's with a silent apology. Delaney finally stepped away, tossing her tote back. "You're lucky I'm in a good mood," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Don't let me catch you here again." He strode out of the aisle, leaving Amara to gather her scattered groceries, her hands shaking so badly she could barely pick up the tomatoes. The crowd dispersed, some casting sympathetic glances, others whispering judgments. Amara left without the comin'. The city's lights blurring through tears she refused to let fall. Frank Delaney leaned back in his patrol car, parked in Harper's Market's lot, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. The evening air was warm, the city humming beyond the windshield. At 46, Frank had been with the Riverside City Police Department for 18 years, a career built on routine calls, traffic stops, shoplifting, the occasional drug bust. To him, the city was a battlefield, and he was its gatekeeper, protecting real citizens from those he saw as threats. His prejudice wasn't shouted from rooftops. It was a quiet poison, rooted in a childhood of scarcity. Frank grew up on Riverside's east side, where factories shuttered and jobs vanished. His father, a mechanic, blamed immigrants for stealing work, a narrative Frank absorbed like gospel. Over the years, that resentment hardened into a belief that people like Amara, foreign-born, visibly different, didn't belong. He didn't hate them, he told himself. He just didn't trust them. The call to Harper's Market had come from a cashier, Linda, who'd reported suspicious behavior in the spice aisle. The tip was vague, but Frank didn't need details. Amara's headscarf, her brown skin, were enough to justify his approach. The pat-down was routine, a show of control. The crowd, the phones, only fueled his performance. Back in his car, Frank scrolled through his phone, ignoring the paperwork piling up. His shift was nearly over, and he was due at O'Malley's, a dive bar where cops unwound his life outside. The badge was sparse, a cluttered one-bedroom apartment, a divorce 3 years past, and a 16-year-old daughter, Ellie, who barely spoke to him. His ex-wife, Karen, had custody, and their communication was limited to texts about child support. Frank's phone buzzed with a reminder about mandatory sensitivity training. He scoffed, tossing it onto the dash. "Waste of time," he muttered. He didn't need lectures to do his job. The incident with Amara faded from his mind as he pulled out of the lot. To him, she was just another face in a city of threats. Amara's apartment, a fourth-floor walk-up in a building smelling of curry. And mildew felt smaller that night. She dropped her tote by the door and sank onto the couch, her hands still trembling. Sarah, her roommate, looked up from her laptop, where she was editing a blog post about coffee. "You okay?" she asked, noting Amara's pale face. Amara's words spilled out, recounting the incident, the accusations, the pat-down, the crowd's stares, the violation of her scarf. Sarah's eyes narrowed with anger. "That's not right," she said, slamming her laptop shut. "You should report him. That's abuse." Amara shook her head. Reporting a cop felt like inviting more trouble. She'd heard stories, deportation threats, ignored complaints. "I just want to forget it," she said, her voice small. But forgetting was impossible. The memory replayed, each iteration sharpening her shame. She didn't cook the biryani, instead curling up in bed, her scarf clutched tightly. At the pharmacy the next day, Amara worked mechanically, her smile strained. Her manager, Mr. Patel, noticed her quietness. "Everything all right, Amara?" he asked. She nodded, lying about being tired. She couldn't relive the shame. But the incident changed her. She noticed customers avoiding her register, a security guard lingering too long. The city, once full of promise, felt hostile. Meanwhile, the video of the incident, recorded by a shopper, spread on X, posted by its city truth seeker with the caption, "Racist cop humiliates innocent woman at Harper's Market." It showed Delaney's sneer, Amara's trembling hands, and the crowd's reactions. Comments poured in outrage, defenses of Delaney, debates about profiling. The post gained thousands of views, picked up by a local news blog. Sarah showed Amara the video. "This is you, isn't it?" she asked. Amara's stomach dropped as she watched herself, vulnerable on the screen. "I didn't want this," she whispered. Sarah was insistent. "People are angry, Amara. They're on your side." Amara wasn't sure she wanted a fight. She just wanted to feel safe. Frank was at O'Malley's nursing a beer when his partner, Officer Mike Torres, texted, "Check X, you're trending." Frank opened the app, his blood running cold. The video showed his face, his scowl, his hands on Amara. Comments called him a racist, a bully. Others defended him, citing shoplifting stats. He downed his beer, ignoring the glances from other cops. At home, he watched the video again, his jaw tight. He didn't see the issue standard procedure, vague tip. But the comments painted a different picture. By morning, Channel 7 was outside Harper's Market, interviewing shoppers about police misconduct. The department issued a statement. "We are conducting an internal review. Frank Sargent. Put him on desk duty. Stay off X," he warned. Desk duty was purgatory paperwork, sidelong glances. Frank told himself it would pass, but the video kept spreading. Activists organized a protest outside the store, holding signs like "Justice for Amara." The media frenzy grew, with pundits debating profiling versus officer discretion. Amara was pulled into the spotlight unwillingly. The Riverside Justice League, a local activist group, contacted her through Sarah, asking her to speak at a rally. She declined, her voice shaking. "I just want to move on." But moving on was impossible. Customers at the pharmacy whispered, some offering sympathy, others staring. Her landlord, Mr. Kowalski, mentioned the news. "Stirring up trouble?" he asked, half joking. Sarah saw opportunity. "You could change things, Amara," she said. Over tea. Amara wasn't sure she had the strength. Amara met Aisha Malik, a civil rights lawyer with the Justice League, in a cluttered office above a bookstore. Aisha listened as Amara recounted the incident, her hands twisting a tissue. "What he did was wrong legally and morally," Aisha said. "We can file a complaint with Internal Affairs and push for a civilian review board hearing." Amara hesitated. "Will it matter?" Aisha's smile was grim. "It'll make them think twice, and it'll show others they're not alone." The complaint process was grueling. Amara relived the incident in depositions, facing stone-faced investigators. The video helped, but Delaney's clean record 18 years, no major infractions worked against her. His union lawyer argued he followed protocol. Frank, on desk duty, felt trapped. Colleagues were divided. Mike thought he'd gone too far. Others backed him. His daughter Ellie called, hurt by the video. "How could you, Dad?" she asked. Frank's explanation sounded hollow. She hung up. The civilian review board scheduled a hearing, and the city buzzed. Protests grew, demanding Delaney's badge and reforms. Amara stayed out of the spotlight, but the stress wore her down. She stopped wearing her scarf outside, a betrayal of herself that stung. Frank, meanwhile, began questioning himself. The video, watched obsessively, showed a terrified woman, not a threat. He researched Amara, finding her scholarship profile. She was working harder than he ever had. The realization hit hard he'd humiliated someone who didn't deserve it. The hearing in a sterile municipal building was packed. Amara sat with Aisha, her hands clasped tightly. Frank, with his lawyer, avoided her gaze. Aisha presented the video, witness statements, and Jamal's testimony. Frank stuck to his script, vague tip, standard procedure. Amara's testimony was raw, describing the humiliation, the violation of her scarf. "I came here to build a life," she said, "not to feel like a criminal." The board deliberated for days. The ruling, a 30-day suspension without pay for Delaney, plus sensitivity training. Activists called it a cover-up. Frank's supporters saw vindication. Amara felt exhausted, not victorious. 2 weeks into Frank's suspension, a car accident landed him in Riverside General with a concussion and a broken arm. The driver, distracted by a phone, was rushing to nursing class. In the hospital, Frank woke to see Amara at his bedside, a volunteer in her nursing program. She froze, recognizing his name. Frank, groggy, croaked, "I'm sorry." Amara didn't respond, focusing on his four. Over days, as she tended to him, Frank's apologies grew. He spoke of Ellie, his regrets, his biases. Amara listened her, face unreadable. On his last day, he gave her a letter raw, honest, detailing his shame and commitment to change. He joined a cultural awareness program and was volunteering at a youth center to reconnect with Ellie. "I can't undo it," he wrote, "but I can try to be better." Amara didn't forgive immediately. Forgiveness was a journey, she told Sarah, but she kept the letter, a reminder that pain could lead to growth. She wore her scarf again, reclaiming her identity. Frank left the force, taking a security job and volunteering. Amara graduated nursing school, her family cheering. Via video call. In Riverside City, 2 lives crossed in cruelty, finding redemption in a hospital room, a letter, and a chance to heal.